Today we're launching a brand new message series we're calling More Than Words, taking a look at how our words have power. Throughout life, I have learned some words that you should never say to anyone, really. These are things you should just never ask or never say. For instance, never reference age in a way that suggests you're making an assumption about someone's age. Like never say, people our age, unless they're much, much older, and they will take it as a compliment. And stay away from weight. Like, don't even talk about it. Even your own. Just don't do it. And never assume that someone is pregnant. Now, speaking to the fellas here, never talk to a woman about her clothes. Trust me, you're never going to have the right things to say. You're never going to get it right. Is it a skirt or a dress? Is it scarlet or crimson? Just don't even go there, guys. And if you see two people together, never assume their relationship. I've heard people say, "Is this your daughter?" No, it's my wife. Trust me, you do not want to be in that conversation. These are just some of the things that you should never say to anyone. On the other hand, I remember hearing some very uplifting and positive things said to me that have stuck with me and shaped my life. Our words matter. Our words are incredibly important. The words we speak shape the way we look at life, and they greatly impact the people around us. Yet despite their power, we often diminish or dismiss the effect of our words. How often do we speak without really thinking about what we're actually saying, right? The truth is that words have incredible power. They can hurt us, and they can wound us, and they can bring healing and refreshment and encouragement. There are times when we just want to give up. But then someone else's words just compel us to keep going. There are things people said to us as children that have just stuck with us our whole lives. The book of Proverbs says, "Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruits." We hold the power of death and life in the words that we use. And that, friends, is a huge responsibility. And our words bear such weight because we have been made in the image and likeness of God. The ability to speak and communicate is one of the most powerful ways that we reflect God's image. Genesis tells us that God spoke the world into existence. God spoke it, and it happened. Now, of course, you and I, we don't have that kind of power. However, through the words that we're consistently speaking, we're sowing seeds that over time will bear fruit, for better or for worse. People create and bring to pass what they continually say. You cannot speak negative words and expect to have a positive life. You can't speak negative words about your marriage and expect your spouse to grow. You can't gossip about your friends and expect those friendships to flourish. You can't consistently speak negatively about your work and have a productive and rewarding career. You can't always speak badly about your teachers in your school and expect to succeed there. You can't rely on criticism and complaint as your contribution to the life of your family or your parish. You cannot speak only negative words and expect to have a positive life. It just doesn't work that way. And let me acknowledge that I am guilty as charged. They say that if you preach to your faults, you'll never run out of things to say. I need to improve in this area as much as anyone. It is easy for me, very easy for me, to focus on what's negative, especially when I've been hurt or disappointed. And when something goes wrong, which inevitably it will, it is very easy for me to paint everything as negative. So I need to work on that just as much as anyone. Because it's such a pervasive problem, we're going to take a look today at negative speech. I'm not talking about a misstep or a one-time blunder here or there. I'm talking about a consistent pattern, a repeated precedent, a lifestyle choice. I'm referring to patterns of speech that we develop over time, patterns which we might not even recognize but become habitual. Most of us have one or all of these patterns. But here's the good news. They can be corrected. To help us, we're going to look at a passage from 1 Peter, which we find in the New Testament. 1 Peter is a letter written by the Apostle Peter. It served as our second reading today, but we're also going to be referring from some of the verses that came a little bit before that too. Now, Peter is writing to Christians who are undergoing brutal persecution at the hands of the Roman Emperor Nero. And so he's trying to give them some words of encouragement. And he does it with some pretty basic advice. St. Peter says, "For those who desire life and desire to see good days, let them keep their tongues from evil and their lips from speaking deceit, slander, malicious speech." Peter is saying avoid sins of speech, no matter what. Now, what are these sins? Well, we can go in lots of different directions with this topic, but Peter mentions three broader, sometimes less easy to recognize categories that cover a lot of territory. So while this is by no means an exhaustive list, these are the three that we're going to be looking at today. First, he mentions deceit. Deception, or lying, is saying something we know not to be true. Some lies might seem insignificant or even harmless. We call them white lies. Lying about your age or how well you did on a test, or saying something that just makes you look better or soften an unpleasant fact. Now, the problem with these little lies is that they open the door to bolder lies. And we can get good at it. It becomes easy for us. Serious lying is so wrong that something in us reacts very strongly when we know that we've been lied to, especially when it comes from someone we trust. Just think of the last time you caught someone in a lie. The hurt or the anger was very deep. The injury feels greater than the sum of its parts. That's why you might say to your kids, "I'm more upset that you lied to me in the first place than what you ended up doing after all." One lie, one single lie, has the power to permanently tarnish a relationship, to sever business ties, or erode confidence in an entire organization. A great fictional example of this is played out tragically in Shakespeare's Othello. Iago gets Othello to distrust his wife by planting seeds of doubt through carefully twisted words that eventually destroys the relationship entirely. And yet, friends, as damaging as lies are, almost every single one of us has lied about something to someone, probably even to people we love. As destructive as it is, lying is sadly quite common. The instinct to lie springs from many things, things like fear or sloth, or self-deceit, but mostly from pride. At the end of the day, lying is about pride in our hearts. So there's lying and there's deceit, and then there is slander. Slander and its accompanying sin of gossip are, in some translations, even referred to as abuse, because it is taken that seriously. It's talking about someone else in a negative or unflattering way, trafficking information that is really none of our business. Gossip spreads information which may or may not be true. while slander spreads rumors we know to be false. And as such, it's more malicious and destructive than gossip. But gossip can be fairly destructive in its own right when it's prevalent and persistent. Sometimes we justify gossip as concern, like, "Oh, I really wonder what's going on in that person's life." Or even venting. Or we dress it up as a necessary exchange of information. But the easiest way to know that it's gossip is when you're not part of the problem and you're not part of the solution, but you're talking about it. Sometimes among our friends or at our workplace, in our neighborhood, gossip is a form of currency and even entertainment. Sometimes it's even the primary or sole form of communication. But it always comes out of an insecurity within ourselves or an envy for others, a distraction from our own problems. A good example might be, my kids have their issues, but their kids, they're out of control. See, gossip relishes in and celebrates another person's failures or shortcomings in order to make us feel good about ourselves. And the best antidote to gossip is prayer. When you're tempted to speak about somebody else, pray for them instead. And when someone else approaches you with gossip, you can graciously shut that down by saying something kind about the person instead. Like, "Oh, she's such a great mom. I just love her." A third form of sin in speech is malicious speech. In other translations, it's read as reviling or maligning or simply complaining. It's what got the Israelites in trouble during the Exodus. No matter what God did for them, it was never enough. They were constantly dwelling on the negative, being pessimistic, blaming God, attacking Moses. It's basically what got them stuck in the desert for 40 years. And this kind of talk always gets us stuck. Nothing is ever good enough. Nobody is ever good enough. You want to know something else about murmuring and complaining? It's boring. It's unattractive. And nobody wants to hear it. If you have to blow off steam, and let's face it, all of us do from time to time, take it to a safe place or to another person. Or better yet, take it to your journal and then just let it die. If you find yourself complaining a lot, why not start saying thank you more often? And it might be hard at first, but the more you say it, the easier it gets. Murmuring and complaining are unkind because they totally lack appreciation and consideration for the other person. They're dishonest because they mischaracterize or even exaggerate the reality, and they find their basic source in ingratitude. You might have recognized a bit of a pattern by now. The words that come out of our mouths reflect our hearts. The words we speak reflect our hearts. Malicious words of complaint reveal an ungrateful heart. Deceptive words reveal a heart that is filled with pride. Slanderous words reveal an envious or an insecure heart. On the other hand, Peter writes, "In your hearts, sanctify Christ as Lord." Are you really sanctifying the Lord in your heart if these sins of speech are just flowing from you? Is your heart truly in a good place and growing in holiness if you're constantly gossiping and lying and complaining? Your patterns of speech, how you handle your conversations, reveal the health of your heart. So speak encouragement. Speak approval. Speak respect and honor. Speak the truth in love. Speak blessing, and your heart will be blessed. And I get it. This is far from easy. But a good exercise in this is to monitor your words, to pay attention to what you say this week in some deliberate way, to examine more carefully and consistently what your words and your patterns of speech reveal about your heart. Or better yet, ask someone close to you to help you to monitor your speech. Ask them to give constructive feedback. Your spouse or your kids will probably be more than happy to help you out with this. In our gospel today, my friends, Jesus promises to send the Spirit of the Father and of the Son, the Holy Spirit, who is given as our advocate and our guide. He calls the Spirit of truth. We need the Spirit of truth. We need that truth in order to be honest with ourselves about the ways we need to change our words so that we can change our lives and positively impact the lives of the people around us. Words have power, and God's word within us has God's power. It's about time we start using that power.